Are any of you Academy Awards fans? Any of you watched that last Sunday night? Not a bunch. There's some hardcore fans out here. Good. I don't know if you saw it or if they even showed it, but there was a very special guest at the Academy Awards last week. Her name was Dolores Hart. And as a young actress, she was kind of the it girl for a while. And she starred in a number of movies with Elvis himself. In fact, she was the woman with whom Elvis had his first on-screen kiss. Dolores Hart. There's one for the trivia books right there. Now, the interesting thing about Dolores is that after a very successful career, many movies with a lot of A-list stars, after all the glitz and the tinsel and the lights and the fame, she decided to take a retreat. And she fell in love with the sisters with whom she took that retreat. And she entered the convent. And now, all these years later, she is Mother Dolores, Mother Superior of the house. They did a documentary film about her, and the title of the film is God is the Bigger Elvis. Great title. It's a story about her life and her choices in all of that. And it's evidently quite a good documentary and was nominated for an Academy Award. And that's how she got invited to come back. Mother Dolores attended the Academy Awards last Sunday evening in full habit. I haven't seen pictures, but I got to look that up. I think that'd be great. God sometimes asks us to do crazy things. And Catherine spoke about this at the beginning, to get up and perform at a talent show, or to become a sister, or to get into fashion, or like Abraham in our first story today, a crazy thing, to take the life of his own child. It sounds awful, and it is. That was the tradition of that period of time, when they thought that would make their God, whoever that God was, appeased or happy with them. So it was a fairly common practice, brutal and crazy as it might seem to us. Abraham was trying to be honorable. He was trying to be faithful. He was trying to do what God was asking of him. And I think there are times in all of our lives where we're asked to do things where there's a calling deep and down inside of our heart. And I'm not just talking about the big questions of vocation. There's also the kind of the day-to-day things that come up in our hearts and in our lives. We're called. Something's tugging at our hearts. Are we listening? Are we listening? I think our readings today are about listening. They're about obedience. Obedience in Latin, ab audire, to listen. That's the beginning of obedience. Now, the thing about Jesus was, he listened a lot. If you read the Gospels, he's always going off somewhere to pray. He was very conscious of his relationship with his Father. And he loved being the Son of the Father. And all he wanted to do was to glorify the Father and to fulfill the Father's mission. And so as he was preaching and proclaiming and healing and driving out demons, at some point he decided, I need to go to Jerusalem. I need to go to Jerusalem. We need to take our message to the heart of the religious establishment. We need to make our point. I need to go to Jerusalem. That's not an easy choice to make because he knew what would happen there. But he was listening and he was obedient. And he knew in his heart that somehow his Father would not let him down, that his Father would not abandon him. And so he made the choice, turned himself, started heading to Jerusalem, and he went up this mountain for courage and to pray and to get closer to his Father. He took some of his best friends, and it was such an intimate encounter It was a mystical encounter, and he was transfigured in that moment. In the intensity of that relationship, in the freedom of his obedience, giving himself completely. He had abandoned himself to his destiny. And in that freedom, he was transfigured. In that freedom, he was glowing. In that freedom, he was at peace and joy. I think in our lives, there are many times we're faced with tough challenges and choices. We don't always know which voice is God's. We're not even sure if we're doing the right thing. But I think if we do our best, and if we choose with the heart of really wanting to follow where God is leading us, I think that somehow, some way, God will lead us in the right direction. We're called to listening. We're called to obedience. And obedience is a word that we don't like. Our whole culture does not like obedience. We kind of revel in rebellion. We revel in kind of civil disobedience. We revel in questioning authority and kind of tearing things apart. But we're asked to listen, and we're asked to obey, to give ourselves to something greater than ourselves. It's not just about us. It's about giving ourselves for something larger, for goodness and for love. It won't always be easy. Sometimes if we choose to follow, we're going to end up headed toward Jerusalem. If we choose to follow, we may end up carrying a cross, many crosses in our lives. But the cross, although it is an instrument of death, also leads us to life. And so we take up our crosses. Jesus says, the one who tries to save his life will lose it. The one who loses his life for me will save it. And again he says, if you would follow me, pick up your cross. It won't always be easy. We won't always completely understand. But God won't steer us wrong. God will not abandon us. God will always lift us up to new life. And so during this Lenten season, let's take things to the next level. Let's really ask, Lord, where are you leading me? And how might I more courageously, generously follow you? With all prudence, I'm not asking us to do crazy things. With all prudence, but truly listening to the heart of God, and with generous spirits to respond to him. Let us listen and let us obey.